Today I'm excited to share the incredible talents of two musicians who I've had the luxury of having in my home, playing music and having conversations and great meals. Our conversation today is about how music enriches our lives by being involved in it, and how understanding where the music comes from can enrich the performance and the way that we also view the music or experience the music. As you go about your day, you may put the radio on, you may choose your favorite playlist to listen to, or you may sing or play yourself and bring memories forward with tunes and songs that you may have known for years. And music can pull at our heartstrings. It helps bring up emotional and mental support. For dancers, it's our vehicle for flow and inspiration as we move through the gestures of the dance style and our feelings. With my career in dance that spans, and I can't believe I'm saying, 5 decades, I've been moved by many styles over the years, but none like the Celtic music that surrounds me daily now. And with several performing groups that toured Nova Scotia and Scotland in the late 90s, it was through the music that I came to live in Mabou and to be a part of the culture of Cape Breton Island here in Nova Scotia. As you learn the stories about our guests, we hope that you will grow and be inspired to look at the music that moves you. So Mairi Britton hails from Scotland, and she has just recently called it a permanent home here in Canada with gaining her citizenship, so we're excited about that. And she's considered a triple threat. I'd say a quadruple threat. She's got her singing, dancing, and musical talents, as well as her understanding of the Gaelic language. She's currently an archivist for the Language and Lyrics Project at the Cape Breton University in the Beaton Institute. And with the work that she's been doing with that, she's been able to pull up some songs and some ideas that she didn't know existed before. Bradley Murphy is originally from Sydney, Nova Scotia, and is a triple threat himself with the Gaelic language, his fiddle and piano skills, and his incredible singing. He released his first album this past spring after spending time exploring the music archives at the Beaton Institute at Cape Breton University. And together these two have talents that we're going to see shared at the Celtic Colours Music Festival in 2023, which is coming up in a few weeks. You're listening to Be Well with Michelle Greenwell. This is sponsored by the Cape Breton Tea Company and Dance Debut Inc. And I want to welcome to the stage Mairi Britton and Bradley Murphy.
Thanks,
Hello.
Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle.
Believe. Thank you.
And I will say Kimmerha, which I hope is correct in Gaelic, but then what's going to happen is you're going to answer me in Gaelic, and then I'm going to be in trouble from there. Kimmerha.
Gleiva, tapalat. Kimmerha hein, Bradley.
Oh, hami gama, hami hati yakam, I guess hami talacha avian.
Gleiva. Bradley said he has tea and he's happy to be here, which I likewise have tea and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, it's beautiful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with bringing forward the card deck. So setting up our audience for listening so that as they go through listening to what we have to talk about, they get a balance and they get the opportunity to bring some harmonizing into their systems while they're listening. So I've got, for those people on the podcast, I'm going to hold up a card that's it's black, but it has a ribbon of color on the front, which represents mother and child. So how we nurture ourselves, how we nurture others through the actions that we take. And this is part of the affirmations for the Body and Biofield deck. There are 4 decks in one, and today I pulled the fascia matrix connections. So this is actually the joints in the body. So as I say this, I'm going to hope that you'll take a nice deep breath and just take a few moments to relax, because when we bring space into the body, and everybody, so those on the podcast you can't see, Mairi and Bradley just sat back and they just reposition themselves, get ready to put that space in there. When we have space in the joints, we have this opening of resonance that happens. And that is when healing can occur, but also when the bones that are on either side of that joint have the chance to go into their own frequency. We don't often think of that, but breathing is so important for the joints to have the space. So that's for the card that got pulled up today, and it's for the jaw and sphenoid. So I'm going to hold the card up, For those on the podcast that can't see this, this has rays of color coming out, which are yellow and orange, and at the bottom is pink and green, and there are orbs through the center of it. I'm sitting in an old manse, and Bradley's sitting in an old manse, so I always chuckle when the orbs show up, because you never know what lovely spirits float through these beautiful buildings that have been here for a long time. So this is for the John Sphenoid, and the affirmation is, when we resonate with our truth, there's a flow and a contentment that overrides all experience. Be aware of the true path and what it feels like to be on it. And I think that's where our conversation is going to go today, just with the passion that we all have for the music and the arts. And I wanted to bring up one more little piece that I had looked up. What is embedded within the card, I'm just looking at my resource book, is connection and power and tension release. So when I talked about opening those joints up, creating the space, and also joy, cranial release, so releasing around the bones or the sutures in the skull, and smell and taste. So as we move to the next little piece, which sets everybody up for the balance, we're going to talk about tea, and we're going to talk about what we have in our teacups today. But then you can think about smell and taste as a part of the package of what we're doing today. So, okay, so Bradley, what have you got in your green mug that I saw there?
I've got that tea that's called Raspberry Thriller. So combination of raspberry and then light leaves, and then also the berries, I think, because it's turned a red color.
Nice. And color is so profound too when you look at the tea and you think about what color it pulls up, because red represents that nurturing piece of the roots and holding us in our roots, which is our conversation today.
Yeah.
And you've got it in a green mug. Any particular significance for that?
Actually, today I organized the kitchen here because there was thousands of dishes, it seemed like, and I just wanted to pare it down to 2 or 3 mugs so I wouldn't be overworked and always thinking about dishes. So this is just one of the ones that are there.
Okay.
I grabbed it green. I think I always think about green as a really calming, grounding color itself too, like a safe feeling color.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful. And then green, you're linking to the heart chakra. So that gives us an opportunity, because that's where our conversation's going to head as well. So that's beautiful. I'm just pulling those ideas out for the audience that's listening and what they may choose to make as they're listening to the podcast, or what they may choose to get after they've listened. So, Mairi, what have you got happening for you?
Well, I'm drinking one of your blends, the Merry Moments, right? Mm-hmm. Out of this lovely Colton McDonnell mug with Cape Breton Island on it. Matches the blue wall behind me. And yeah, I think, well, maybe, I think you're going to talk about the tea blend a little bit and the significance of who the Mary and Merry Moments is. But I think this is a lovely example of a local crafts person creating this gorgeous mug, and you blending the tea named after a neighbor, friend, step dancer. So it just sort of sums up some of the many reasons that I love Cape Breton, basically. All the talent and the creativity that's right here and the way it all links together.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And it's interesting because so far we've just talked tea and pottery and how that can connect. Yeah. And so what I wanted to bring forward is the tea that we're drinking, which is Merry Moments. And this was created for Mary Janet MacDonald, who I've known for a long time and is the reason I live in Cape Breton, as a step dancer and an ambassador of Cape Breton Island and Nova Scotia. Mary Janet was very influential in me teaching dance and Cape Breton style, also saving me from not knowing very much about Cape Breton music and dance and helping to educate. So she has a significant place in my heart. She was also the first person I recorded when I started doing the podcasts. And she was very influential over COVID by offering online Facebook sessions for people, bringing them into her kitchen. And that has Tunes and Wooden Spoons So she has reached out every way she can to support people. So the tea is Merry Moments, and it's in honor of Mary Janet. And the other piece of influence, and this brings us to the conversation we're going to have today about the power of music, is that this tea sat backstage at the Craignish Hall on Wednesday night for a Cape Breton Square set. And with that, Mary Frances Leahy and Joe McMaster were playing that night. And so the tea has been infused with the music that comes from that event. And that, exactly, everybody's smiling. That always brings a smile to people's faces to know that influence has come in. And when you go to sip the tea, that intention is sitting there and it has the opportunity to enhance your experience of taste and smell. So I will say cheers to the two of you. Thank you so much for being here for this, but also for the projects we have coming forward and for the talents that you're going to bring to the table. Thank you.
Sláinte.
And my mug today is Friends United, which is a beautiful Indigenous art collection and company that supports spreading the word about the talents of Indigenous artists. And so I was happy to add that today too, which is down on the side where Bradley lives.
Yeah. Very close, actually,
Cleveland.
probably about 20 minutes away.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful location.
Yeah.
Okay, so we set the stage for those people listening to the podcast so that they can be involved in some healing work and the opportunity to relax and regroup. And while they're doing that, we want to bring forward the talents of these two wonderful people and what they're going to be bringing to the island in the coming weeks. So Mairi, do you want to share with us your background and then talk a little bit about the language and lyrics project that you work with, and a little bit about your musical career as well?
Sure.
Put that all in a nutshell.
Okay. Well, I am originally from Edinburgh in Scotland, and Gaelic music and language has been a part of my life since I was 5, maybe earlier with records and stuff in the house, but I really began actively learning it from the age of 5. There was what is still a wonderful children's Gaelic music organisation called Féisceann and Gael in Scotland, and they have local Féisceann all over the country. And so I was lucky enough to go to the one in Edinburgh, and that was where I started learning the harp and Gaelic songs and step dance. And when you were talking about Mary Janet, she, in a sort of roundabout way, she's the reason that I live here in Nova Scotia too, in a way, because I was learning music and Gaelic my whole childhood. I really got into the language, I'd say, when I was around 12, and was sort of fairly fluent by the time I was a teenager. But I was learning step dance and was really enjoying learning that from the age of about 8 at the Féisceann. And the people that I was learning from, some of them had learned from Mary Janet from when she had been coming over to Scotland from the early 80s onwards. And I really got bitten by the step dance bug, and that was the reason I came out to Cape Breton in 2014 for 2 months to learn more about the dance culture and also Gaelic or Gaelic, as it's often known as here. In Scotland we say Gaelic, and here it's Gaelic or Gaelic. So yeah, it was also Mary Janet's niece, Margie, Mary and Dawn, who were over at Cowlus, which is a Gaelic organisation, as kind of a summer camp, I suppose, on the Isle of Uist, and I met them over there, and Margie was so sweet and helpful in getting. She wrote me a letter that helped me to get some grant money to come over to fund my first trip, and And then I just absolutely fell in love with the place and ended up moving here 2 years later when I'd finished my master's. So I think, you know, you were talking about pathways before, and I just feel like so many of the best things in my life, out with my family, who, you know, I've always been there and are fabulous. But so many of the people I've met, the friendships that I've made, the work that I've become involved in, the places that I've traveled to have all been around that nexus of language and music and culture. And I really don't know what my life would look like if it wasn't for the Gaelic language and culture and the way that they intertwine. So yeah, and now I've been here for 7 years. I came over here it was meant to be a year for an adventure. And I got a job teaching Gaelic at St. Francis Xavier University, and I got more and more involved in other projects, including the Language and Lyrics project that you mentioned. So that has been a project. It was initially a 4-year grant that we got from the Social Science and Humanities Research Council of Canada it was Dr. Heather Sparling at Cape Breton University, who was and still is the director of that project, with a number of partners, including Gaelic Affairs Nova Scotia, Highland Village Museum, the Digital Archive of Scottish Gaelic over in Scotland, and others. And yeah, we've spent 4 years creating an index of Gaelic songs that were made or known in Nova Scotia, and digitizing lyrics and kind of collating recordings. And now we're focusing on a collection that was made by the folklorist Dr. John Shaw, recordings that were mostly done in the sort of 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And we're doing a deep dive into that. There's a team of us working on transcriptions and going through. There's over 2,000 recordings of songs and stories and folklore, like other items of folklore, proverbs and that kind of thing. You know, customs and lore, and we're having such a great time going through and listening to the over 200 tradition bearers who were generous enough to sit with John and to share their knowledge with him. So yeah, that's kind of, I don't know how much of a nutshell that was, but that's a start to my journey.
Wow. And you're right, because when you think about all of the different opportunities that came up, they become part of that music, that wave of how people interact in and out of each other. And when I think about where have I traveled in my time, it's always been related. My kids would say to work, but it's always been related to dance. Where would I like to go next? Who would I like to see, be involved with, mentor with? And that's always how I've chosen where I've traveled. So
yeah. And work, you know, when it's this kind of work is also joy and play. Yeah. And we're so lucky to be able to say that, I think.
Exactly. Do you want to talk a little bit about the music you have done and recorded so that people can understand a little bit what you've done so far?
Sure. So the main recording, I guess, that I have out in the world is one that I made with 3 wonderful musicians from the States, and we formed a band called Farsun back in 2017. So the other 3 are Katie McNally on fiddle and Neil Perlman on piano and step dance and a bit of accordion, and Elias Alexander on pipes and whistles, vocals, and then I mostly sing on the album. So we made that at Lakewind Studios in, I guess it was early, 2018, I think, or 19. Yeah, we, you know, obviously COVID had a kind of devastating impact on on our, so certainly particularly our ability because to tour and to play together, because the border was closed for such a long time and we couldn't travel. And but that music is still out there in the world. So it's just a self-titled album called Farsan. Lots of Gaelic songs, lots of Pushtapial, which are Gaelic like dance tunes that are sung. So we were really trying to integrate the language into the music in that album. So that's the main place, and we have a website for that. It's just FARSAN Farsan. It's on Spotify, and yeah, I'm kind of dreaming up another album of songs that I hope will come into being at some point. But other than that, you can find me at Milling Frolics, like the one I was just at today down the road, and Kaylee's, and anywhere where Gaelic singers are congregating. I like to be in the mix and hearing everyone else's songs and contributing a few as well.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So when I said quadruple threat, you can see how, for those people listening, you can see how all those pieces are weaving together, and the passion in the different areas of arts, and how much fruition, I guess, comes out of all of that. So thank you, Mairi. So Bradley, would you like to share now your background and what you've been up to?
Sure. Yeah, it's a windy road. Holy. So you mentioned, yeah, I am from Sydney way. I'm not actually from Sydney. I'm from a place called East Bay, which is probably 20 minutes south of Sydney, and it's very rural. And the folks that settled there actually originally came from Grand Myra, north the river on the east side of Cape Breton. And those were Gaels who would have come across in the 1820s from Morar area in Scotland. And it's something part of a trip that I did recently in my life to go back and retrace those roots, because my grandmother, when I grew up near her down the hill, she would give us little inklings of Gaelic, little words to talking about her community growing up, and that was her first language. She was always really supportive of the music. And I was getting into the music in my teens, although I was put in step dancing lessons when I was about, 5 or 6 years old. And then we moved around a little bit with my family when they were younger. So I kind of had some touches into that, and then ended up finding the music through piano later on in life, probably in my teens, and going to the Gaelic college, and then kind of exploring the fiddle and exploring singing. And I would say I experienced like a little bit of both connection with the music, and also really a sense of, you can see how generations have been affected by colonizing attempts to make people feel ashamed of their culture. Like, that folks were Gaelic, but they would never say that that's who they were. Like, my parents would not identify with being Gaelic, even though they had come from Gaelic people. All of their former ancestors would have been Gaelic speakers, either from Ireland or Scotland. But in one generation, there has been a bit of a disconnect. So for me, the music and also art has always been a kind of way to reconnect. And I explored visual arts a lot also, and it ended up bringing me after high school to study architecture and design. And I went to Ottawa. I guess I was on kind of a ferry voyage through Ottawa and Paris and Montreal. And I was speaking a lot of French, and I was learning a lot about architecture. And in the back of my head was all this music, from the Kaylees and from the square dances growing up. And it was at some point when I was in Montreal and my grandmother had passed away, and I was going back and forth home to Cape Breton, and I started to listen to Gaelic songs, because it was really the only thing that was like soothing my soul. Like, it was soothing me in this way that nothing else really could. And I was thinking, I really want to learn how to sing these songs, because the melodies are feel like the root of all the music that I've been growing up with, whether it was the fiddle tunes or it was like something was really pulling me with the songs, and I started to try to read the words and like approach the words through like phonetics or like sonically, and had no rhyme or reason. I didn't know what I was saying, didn't know what I was getting at, and moved home and found an opportunity to learn through immersion the language. And in the back of my head, it was I want to connect this back to music. And ever since I did that first Tokel na Gaelic with Shannon McMullen and Amber Buchanan and Emily McDonald, it was in 2016. It opened up the world for all of these beautiful elements of Gaelic culture, and I was finally putting the pieces together, whether it was the step dancing, the piano, the singing, the fiddle, seeing it as all like components that are like these beautiful expressions of a culture of people that I was a part of, and I finally found that piece. And it's still tricky for me to have found that and to kind of be in my family world, because I know that my parents are still like in the bit of the darkness with it, like, why are you doing that? Or they don't really understand what those pieces are for me. But when you talk about self-nurturing, like, I don't know what it is about my experience growing up and my connection with my grandparents, that closeness, I think probably is what is always bringing me back to remember that connection to the culture and the connection to land and food growing and respecting the earth and understanding that part of the Gaelic ethos as well. Like, that has all become really important to my journey. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I'm thinking about how many people who maybe didn't land in Nova Scotia that came over from Scotland but ended up going further in Canada, down the road to the west coast, who wouldn't even think about labeling themselves as Gaelic. That wouldn't even, because I was thinking of myself. My family ended up in Alberta and BC, and coming from European descent with Scottish background, but also with Hungarian, it was never something you conversed about that you would be Gaelic. So it's really interesting to hear you say that, and thinking about how many people might be detached just because of that rift, having moved further down the country, where right here now in Cape Breton we have the Gaelic wave, I guess, of bringing everything back is so strong, and your generation is able to nurture and bring that up. And like you said, for your parents, it's a hard piece because it was pulled out, and so it's hard to bring that back in again. Yeah.
There's something about the music that has been reverberating that is still recognizable, I think, to people who don't have the language, right? Like, there's people who really love the fiddle music, and even if they don't know the language, they're still able to hold that piece. I think that's amazing that we still have our music and dancing for that reason.
Yeah, it's an amazing piece to pull people back that have that ancestral connection that was lost, or in some ways, in some instances, forcibly taken from them. And also that it's a way for people that don't necessarily have an ancestral connection, but they still have this heart connection to the music. And you see that happening too, where people from all kinds of different backgrounds, it's still somehow it really resonates with them, and then it becomes the way in which they enter that world and start to learn and to listen and then to contribute. And yeah, that's a beautiful thing to witness as well.
I'm thinking about, and I'd never looked at it from this perspective, because being a Highland dancer and a competitive dancer, and then a choreographer, all with Highland and Scottish dance, but that's all syllabus work. and set music, which I did, I have a music background, but I did not really understand the music until I started step dancing and discovered I really didn't understand what a jig really meant, what a reel really meant. Not just I put a sword steps to it, or I did a chanteuse. And when I started learning the step dancing, that's when the roots really came in. And even though I was still diving into the background of my family, it wasn't till I came to Cape Breton, came into the music, and I don't speak Gaelic as much as I'd love to. I speak movement much better than I do any other language. That gives me the opportunity to engage at a more root level, I think, into the culture, which I had never thought about it in that perspective. So thank you for that. So even though I don't wear tartan anymore, because it was constant, which tartan we were going to wear, but now here it's more about where you are on the land, what's the background of the family, the conversations around tea, because there's always a teapot going in somebody's house and some sweets, and that cultural perspective of it is much more on the invite to find out who you are and who the people are. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So let's move from there to the performance that the two of you are involved in with Celtic Colours. Let's talk about that show, because this is a very special show for Celtic Colours to put together, where they really are targeting the archives. Do you want to share what you're working on?
Sure. I was so thrilled when Don Beaton, who's the artistic director of Celtic Colours, got in touch, because this is a show that I had kind of dreamed of putting together ever since we finished the song index that I talked about earlier with language and lyrics. And she just sort of approached me with what I had been dreaming up for a little while, which was to get together a group of Gaelic singers. Some of us are from Scotland originally, like Cathy Ann McPhee, wonderful singer from Barra, who lives in Dartmouth now, and then myself from Scotland originally and now over here, but also a lot of local singers, including Bradley, Mary Jane Lamond, who was my colleague, is still my colleague on the Language and Lyrics project, and several others, and we are drawing songs from the archives. So essentially the song index that we created links to a number of different archives and different places where the songs and the recordings of the songs live. So one would be the Beaton Institute, for example, where they have thousands of recordings of Gaelic songs and other items of folklore, or the other collection that we're working on just now, which is housed at St. FX. And we're taking a deep dive, and everyone is pulling out songs that are some may have been familiar, some are new. We're trying to learn some songs fresh for the concert, so that it's bringing songs to light that, there was such an awareness that the tradition bearers were passing on in the kind of latter half of the 20th century. And so there was this big rush to get out and record as many people as possible. But a lot of those recordings have barely been listened to since. And so this is such a nice project to be able to reconnect with those voices and then ensure that the songs are still part of the living tradition. And we're hoping that in the concert we'll be able to project images of the original tradition bearers on a screen behind us, and so that they'll be very much with us along the way as part of the process. So I don't know, Bradley, if you want to add anything about your experience of the songs that you've been working on, or anything else to do with the concert. That's a little overview.
Well, that's it. I think like if you look at the tradition of song and learning songs, it would have been from people passing it from one person to another. But when I was talking earlier about that disconnection and that generational disconnection, we have this gap where we're at this kind of place where a lot of the folks who held those traditions have passed on, but we do have the recordings, and so we're going into the in a way that's like we're looking at the singer who sang that and trying to learn a bit about their life as well and share a bit about that person who held that song, so that when we're presenting the song, we're also presenting the area where they lived and what they, what their life was like a little bit, and carry that singer with you when you're learning the song. So each singer is the idea is to learn, I think, two or one or two songs from the archive to have it, or both like have for the show, but then also carry with us into the future. And so the songs I'm working with are from Lockie Gillis, who's from Grand Myra North, where my grandmother was from, and her brothers actually would have sang with Lockie, and he's someone who is well recorded. And then the other is Jim Charles McNeil, who I believe is from the area of Red Islands, and that's like near where my parents and my family settled. So try to find someone in the East Bay area, Benyon, Big Pond, Red Islands, that sort of neck of the woods to draw from. So I think it's really, really beautiful project because I would probably be doing this work anyway. And I use the archives a lot of times to look up a song. But it's been really beautiful to work with them again and to be able to kind of do a search of like person or area, like the community, and then to find songs come up from that place. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Nice.
You should talk a little bit about your album, Bradley. Sorry to jump in there, but just you didn't mention that before, and I know you really dug into the archives when you were working on that.
Yeah, there was an album I put out last May, and it took me about 2 years to complete it, and then maybe 3 or 4 years in the making. Some songs that I got from when I went to Scotland, some songs that I learned here in Cape Breton from different milling frolics or heard over the years, and then some songs from recordings as well. And that's probably where I started to dig in. The music and recording, you can do a lot of things on a recording that you can't necessarily do sitting here singing a song or singing a song in a room. You can really layer things and bring influences in from different elements. And I'm someone who listens to a wide range of music, a lot of electronic, a lot of experimental stuff, and some punk growing up too. And it was just kind of a creative way to kind of take the songs and have some fun with it and be expressive and express some feelings that I might have wanted to talk about, I guess, in a musical way. So I'm happy with the result of it. I think people are enjoying it too. It's a good listening album, and you can find it on streaming platforms. So it's called Bio mouth. It translates the word mouth in Gaelic, Beul. And I have a website, bradleymurphy.ca, and you can find the music on there.
Beautiful. Thank you. I'm glad you caught that, Mairi.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful album, so I want people to know about it.
Thanks.
So I'm thinking about that dive that you've done, Bradley, into finding the songs where your people come from.
Yeah.
And being able to make that connection. And as I'm thinking about how we started the podcast with the affirmations, we set the intentions, trying to get people to be grounded. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience of choosing that kind of music over maybe some of the other ones you chose for your album? Just what the feeling was like when you started to connect with those songs.
Well, there was one song, and it's the opening song on the album, where that was it was a Lockie song. It was a song from an ancestor and from the area where the people are from. And that feeling that I had doing that particular song was pretty powerful, because a number of reasons. I started to be introduced to the recording. Actually, it was a roommate I moved in with in Sydney for a year, and I realized that she was his granddaughter. But I didn't know that before moving in. And she had the album and the record, so we would put it on, we were listening to it. And then I learned about my grandmother and her brother, and that they knew each other and they were singers together. And at some point after that, the pandemic hit, and I moved out to Marguerite, and I was farming with Peter LeBlanc. A friend came up to us one day and he said, "Oh, Bradley, I have this old tape of this old Gaelic singer, and I don't know what to do with it. I'm just thinking maybe you'll like it and maybe you'll want to listen to it." And it was him. It was Lockie Gillis, the tape that he had. So I was like, okay, he's probably trying to reach me, I think. He's probably trying to reach me at this point. And it kept coming up, and I started to dig a bit, and I sent a message to a couple of people, like, where can I find more? And someone said, "Oh, you should really listen to this song from him, Ed Farinhu," because the way he sings it, it's a bit of a different setting. And I started to listen to it and work on it and sing with him in the recording, and just like over the whole summer, just try to understand the words of the song and the meaning of the song, and learning the language with the music, and coming through. Now, like when I sing it, I feel like I'm still singing it with him. You know, I feel like I'm singing it along with him, or I feel him with me. And that's a really beautiful feeling. And I don't always sing that song because it is pretty heavy, but it's similar to what we're doing with this project. I think in both instances, whether it's Jim Charles McNeil or it's like meeting somebody and getting absorbed in their voice and then their song, and you're going to be carefully and with a lot of respect handling that material so that it can be shared and enjoyed by people today. Mm-hmm. With the living. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that really brings the archives to life, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I know, Mairi, sometimes sitting there and you're doing all of the computer stuff to get everything to the right spot, which takes the fun out of it. But when you actually find the person and you find the essence of who they are and what they were about, that brings an archive piece to life. Is there anything that you've been playing with, Mairi, that has a similar kind of tone to what Bradley's describing?
It's a little different, I guess, because I don't have family here, and so the people that I'm listening to, I don't have that family relationship. But it's amazing how I kind of feel like I'm starting to get to know people through listening to the recordings, and there aren't that many women who were recorded, but every so often, if there's a little bit of their explaining something at the beginning of the recording, or there's just like there's a strength that these women had, the men too, but I think I'm not sure why there were fewer women that were recorded, but I'm so glad that we have the recordings of the ones that exist, because they had beautiful songs. And but yeah, really, like, just the characters of these people, how much of that comes through in the very little that they say sometimes, but the long, beautiful songs that they had. And yeah, the singing along to learn a song that's really poignant sometimes, and especially when I was thinking about a milling song, the Lachlan Hall Neil, had, and it's really a song that needs to be sung with people. The way it kind of like the final word or note of the chorus is, you're singing it at the same time as the verse is coming in, so you need everyone around the table to come in with that verse strongly, and he's singing it on his own, so it's sounding different, but it just sort of felt so nice when I was learning it from the recording, that, you know, he had that there was a singer there to come in, and yeah, you just, you know, you wonder what would they think if they knew how beloved these recordings were, and how much time we spent listening and trying to decipher what they were saying, you know, when you come to transcribe and there's a line, you just can't get it, you can't get it, you're listening 100 times, and then suddenly you're like, oh, of course, that's what it is. Or sometimes you never get it and you just wish that you could go back in time and ask them, you know, what were you saying here? Because the dog barked or someone came in the back door, or it's just, you know, too hard to make it out. That connection is just, it's so important, I think. And they were so humble, I think, most of these people, you know, they would never imagine that somebody would down the line spend, you know, 16 hours listening to their voice and trying to write down every word and then sing the song on a stage at a concert, or you know, I wish they knew. Maybe they do know somehow, how important we still think that this material is, and how much we love it and honor it.
I think that's a big thing, actually. Like, taking the music to the stage is something that they would not even imagine going on. I think a lot of times these singers were singers in the home, or they would sing at like at a milling table, or maybe while they work, but it would never consider it for like a public performance. And that's something that I've definitely struggled with as a performer growing up. Like, when I started playing music and would get in front of people, be shaking or have like this like horrible anxiety. But I've worked through that. I don't feel that as much anymore. I definitely feel it less with the Gaelic songs, but I think it's interesting to think about that. And I understand how terrifying it might feel to get up and sing those songs in front of people, but it's a different time and a different context, and we're trying to remind a lot of people about and help people reconnect. So it kind of has to be on stage in some ways.
But yeah, so many of the songs, they're meant to be sung in groups. You know, all the milling songs were never meant to be sung by one person as a performance. They were, you know, so all of these work songs, they were there for the purpose of helping the work go by, and we don't do that so much anymore. But it's one thing that I really love about the Gaelic community in Nova Scotia, is that we do still get together for recreational frolics. And I was just at one down in Sky Glen today, and you know, the milling table was there. There was a beautiful blanket that someone had made and donated, and it's all felted to, you know, it's so thick and tight now. Obviously, if you had been milling it to turn into cloth, you would have stopped long ago. It's a little over felted now, but just so lovely to sit around the table with whoever turns up on the day and hear songs that, you know, that you're reminded of songs that maybe you didn't hear in a long time. And it's absolutely a community activity. And I think another thing that's interesting with Gaelic songs is that the words were always, and are really still, meant to be the most important thing. So you're telling a story, and the melody has to suit the words, because in Gaelic, the vowel length is very important. So the difference between bata, which is a stick, and a bata is a boat. So just if the accent is on the A there, it's stretching it. So you have to, the melody has to allow for those long and short vowels, and it will change a little verse to verse because of that. And you know, you're trying to communicate. You're telling the story. You're sharing that with an audience that traditionally, of course, would have understood every word, would have been, you know, may have known the song well and was waiting for your interpretation of it. And that's something that's obviously shifted now. That especially when you're on stage, chances are hardly anyone in the audience knows what you're singing, and it's a very different experience if you know that even one or two people are, you know the song or understand the language. And I think there's still, you know, there's a beautiful connection that can take place with audience members that don't have a word of Gaelic. There's still, like, the music speaks, and so much of what the culture is speaks through the music, but that you know, the language piece is just another layer. It's, you know, hopefully it's an incentive for people to learn the language. And I think for both Bradley and I, it certainly was that, you know, we love the songs, and because of that, we wanted to learn the language. And I definitely remember that was my impetus. I wanted to know exactly what I was saying. I wanted to be able to tell the story in the song. But yeah, it would be so lovely if more people were learning, and so that, you know, wherever you went, you could know that there were a few people in the audience who were really getting all those extra nuances, whilst collectively you're just, you know, sharing in the beauty of the song, no matter where you're from and what language you speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that leads us nicely into the mini event that's going to happen after you do the Celtic Colours one. So that Celtic Colours one is on Monday of the Thanksgiving weekend. And on the Tuesday, we've put together an event. It has a little bit of a different idea behind it, but taking from the archives and being able to be involved with the archives is behind all of it. So it lends itself to complement very well. And so we're going to be at Cape Breton University in the archives. We get to sit amongst where all the recordings and pieces are held, which means that we get to sit in all that knowledge and wisdom and talent and passion for living, I guess is the best way to say that. And the two of you will be sharing more of the stories about the music that you are working with and presenting with. And we're also talking a little bit about the keys that some of the music has been written in, and how we may be holding on to those keys or maybe changing them. And that perspective is the interest that inspired me to think about bringing this kind of an idea forward as I was exploring the different frequencies that each of the bones in the spine hold. And as I talked about the joints at the beginning, about the space that happens between all those bones, what happens when you take music and it's written in one key? Where does it influence in the body? What might it have been inspiring by the people who are singing it, particularly if they were work songs? And then what happens if we change that key? Where does it travel in our body? How might it change the way we feel and how we experience things? So there's a little bit of that happening while we're exploring within the archives. Is there anything you would like to bring forward about what you've noticed with the music that you've played with, where it sits well for you in some capacity and doesn't sit so well in others? Is there anything that comes to mind?
I always find that there's a lot of the songs I end up singing in this E major or minor, or D major or minor. And that gives me a good range for the low notes and the high notes that I can reach in my own, where my own voice sits. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I do notice like a difference when somebody with a higher register can sing higher notes, and like what that feels like. But then also I find that I'm in this middle zone where, like, if I often sing with women, not necessarily, or like I'm not saying that all women have high pitched voices, but I'm saying that some of the people that I sing with who have high pitched voices are women, and they like I will have to try to find a common key with them so that we can sing like both comfortably, because oftentimes if it's one key, I'm like really reaching for the high note or really struggling for the low note. So I don't know. I think every singer has their own center in a sense. Like when you do um when you're in meditation, you know, wherever your own body resonates with that is kind of sometimes like a unique thing to your own how you're made up.
Mm. Yeah, I end up singing in C a lot. That's sort of, I think I'm like right in the middle, just like mid-range C or yeah, sometimes I guess F, and yeah, it's interesting where that then puts you in relation to musical instruments. Sometimes, you know, a lot of traditional music is in D and G or A, and the harp is tuned in E flat, which is not a friendly key for fiddles. So the more levers you put on the harp, the more it you know, that you put the levers on and it raises the note a semitone, so that you can play in keys with a lot of sharps as well. But there is something about when I play in E flat, and it just like the instrument sings a little more. It's like every lever just sort of dampens the string ever so slightly. You wouldn't really notice until like the difference between playing in E or E flat. You know, it just it allows it to sing in a different way. But yeah, but obviously that's not a nice key for fiddle. So then you end up gravitating towards yeah, you know, C, and with fewer flats, I suppose. C, G, D, A, and then the pipes are a whole different ball game. That's like they've had such a lot of influence on traditional music, but they're kind of, the Highland pipes they're sort of in B flat, but they're not even quite there either. And then you can play it with an A chanter so that you can kind of join the crowd a little more. But I'm, you know, it would be better to ask a piper about the nuances of how the tuning of the pipes have come along. But that's, you know, they're a Mixolydian scale, 9 notes, and so pipe tunes are within, you know, a 9-note scale, and in a lot of modal music in Gaelic, in the Gaelic culture. So that's kind of getting a bit technical maybe, but yeah, when you suggested this concert idea, Michelle, I was just got to thinking about different keys and the sort of the personality of different keys, and I'm enjoying kind of exploring that and thinking about it more. Like, how does this tune sound? I started learning a tune and then playing it in like 3 or 4 different keys on the harp, and kind of thinking, oh yeah, you know, this it has a very different a different feel in different ranges, and you can kind of, some tunes are written in a certain key. You know, obviously with traditional music, we've no idea what key they were the very first time that tune was sung or played, what key it was in, and whoever recorded it, whoever is in the archive, you know, they're just singing it in whatever key was good for their voice on that day, or, you know, but some tunes I think have always been sort of probably in an approximation of D, or that's maybe changed over the centuries as well. But yeah, contemporary tunes, sometimes you can really see why the person, why the composer picked that key, and that it just, you know, it brings out just a little extra element of that piece. Yeah, I don't know, Bradley, if you have any other thoughts on that.
There's 2 thoughts. I think when you say with singing in the key that you feel on that day, it might not even be in concert pitch, right?
Yeah.
Singers, if they just go sing a key, it might not even fall on what we know as D or E flat. It might be somewhere in between. And that's just where they sing that song, and they might change keys halfway through without realizing, or they might add in notes that are like half notes without even think of it in that way. It's just more of like a vibration that they're going for. But then I do play fiddle, and I notice when a tune is written for that key on that instrument, because you know how you can feel it, like how certain strings will want to resonate at certain parts of that tune. Like if it's in G and you have the low G string there to kind of anchor part of the tune, it's structured for the violin, a certain tune. So things might have evolved that way too. Like we'll take this tune, it feels better in G on the fiddle, so we'll play it in G, kind of thing. And I also do like to explore that too, playing tunes in other keys. Like you can take A minor tunes and pipe tunes that usually play on the top two strings of a fiddle, and you can do the same fingering on the D and the A on the fiddle and play the tune the same way, but with your fingers, but it's in a different key on the fiddle. So you get a whole lower realm of the sound of that tune, which oftentimes is played high pitch, but now you're bringing it to a lower pitch place, and it's a little, you got a deeper tenor and a bit more forgiveness from your strings, because on the fiddle, the E and the A strings are quite thin, and they will be high frequency and bright sounding, but then you bring that down to your D and A string, and you get that like deeper, grittier, lower tone. Yeah.
And I know in the dance hall, when they change keys in the middle of a reel, and everybody's excited because it's the reel to begin with, and it's lively, and everybody's exchanging by chaining with their hands, so they're connecting with people. But then when the musicians switch the key and do that slight change, and the hooting and the hollering that happens, and the extra energy that comes into the movements that everybody brings to the circle, it's always an exciting time. And I think that's the part that inspired me to think about, how do these keys affect us and how do we do things? It's lovely to hear from a musical perspective what you experience as the musician, and also, as you said, finding that key that's your home base, and then being able to do your resonance from there. And then my other area of interest is, what does that mean to the audience, and what the audience experiences and what resonates with them. And as you fill them up with the music, how do they start to open up? So how do those joints expand? How does their breathing soften? How does their posture start to change, where they sit a little bit taller? And a lot of, you see that in the hall too, because people will start kind of slouched down in their seat, and then the toe starts tapping, which for those people listening to podcasts who've never been to Cape Breton, everybody taps their toe to the music, and that toe tapping starts to really pump the body and really bring it up. And then when you start to see people that really had low energy when they came into the hall, they're just bubbling and excited and talking to their neighbors as they're heading out of the hall at the end of the night. It's always so much fun to watch that whole experience unfold. And so that was part of what I really wanted to be able to explore, and the idea of the archives, and knowing that we could get to the root of where things came from. And I appreciate, Bradley, you talking about getting to know that person and who wrote it and why they wrote it, and Mairi, what you're bringing in from the stories that come in from the work songs, the reason behind them, because then that changes the intention of those songs and the way that we can really relate to them. So yeah, so for those people that are listening that have the opportunity, that's going to be on the Tuesday after Thanksgiving, and that will be at CBU up in Sydney. And it is, let me see, the one for Celtic Colours on Monday the 9th is at the Highland Arts Theatre, and you do need to have tickets for that one. It can be found on Celtic Colours website. For the one that happens in the archives, it's called The Key to Our Hearts. You can find it on the Celtic Colours schedule, and that one is free. So you just need to come and enjoy it, and it starts at 11:30 in the morning. And afterwards, they've offered a tour of the archives for those people who'd like to learn a little bit more and get the chance to explore them. Or if you're a musician that maybe hasn't thought about even going into the archives, then maybe that's a way for you to get a first introduction and start to look that way. Is there anything else you'd like to add on that little piece?
I don't think so at this point. It'll be really exciting to share all these songs in just over a month, I guess.
I know. The times are coming.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that we touched on some of the topics, but I feel like there's so much more to talk about and to explore.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm looking forward to having the space to do that in October with all of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree. And then we'll be joined by Colin MacLeod from Scotland, who's coming over to share this. And I've been working with him this last year with intuitive playing. And so all of us have been talking about playing intuitively and exploring the music, expanding the music, and seeing what we can do with it. Bradley, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the explorations we've done with color that you had a chance to do at the house here? Because that one just blows my mind. So I want to hear it from you in your words.
Sure. So in Michelle's studio, she has, how was it,
Six paintings altogether.
6 paintings of different colors and different intensities. And the exercise was to look at the painting and be affected by it and allow the music to translate what I was feeling from the painting. And it was really interesting to explore what comes up with the color red versus green versus gray, what kind of rhythms, what kind of keys I would play in, what kind of tunes came to mind. And it was kind of a really neat way to get into music and to translate like visual and visuals into music. And I was thinking a little bit about this earlier because oftentimes in performance, you might play the same tune, but in different venues, with different audiences, you're going to react and play it a little bit differently based on who's in the audience and the energy you're picking up. Well, I think that's similar to when you're sitting in front of a painting. It's like your painting is your audience in a way, or your painting is giving you something, or there's a story behind that, whoever made that painting. And that comes through subconsciously in the playing. And that's a really, really beautiful exercise. I don't know if we're going to be doing some of that at the event.
And that'll be the event that happens on Thanksgiving Sunday. So that'll be on the 8th. And that's at the Inverness Arts Centre. And that one is about, we called it landscapes. So we're starting with landscape pictures, but then we'll be coming down to color and exploring through the color and letting the audience have an opportunity to engage with the art as well as the artist. And the artist will be playing with a piece of art that they haven't been playing with before. So it'll be their first time looking at it and experiencing it. And the audience gets that raw perspective of how they can interact with it. And so if that's of interest to people, that one is $10. So it has a small fee that goes with it. And with that one, we're going to do a flight of tea. So we're going to be taking the Celtic colors from green all the way through the oranges, yellows, reds, and letting people experience what it's like to have teas in different colors, which is also artwork in itself. So, yeah. Brad, do you want to talk about, I know when you connected with the wood element and the greens, you had talked about that creating a full picture for you and how that changed from trying to be perfect with what you were playing to be more in the song. Do you remember that piece?
That was, I can't really remember talking about that. I think that was definitely in the moment there, Michelle. Something came up about playing with that green piece that just, oh yes, okay. I think there was something about, there's a little bit of a pressure sometimes, especially with traditional music, to play a tune in a way that sounds like someone else or sounds like it's part of the tradition, whether it's the way you're doing your cuts or the way you're playing the tune. Is it too Irish or is it too Scottish or is it Cape Breton enough or is it sounding like it's Don Messer? You know, there's so many flavors that a tune can be played in, and sometimes you can feel a little bit of pressure to to be playing the right one or to be playing something that people recognize as, oh, that's he's playing in the traditional way, that's good. But that's arbitrary in some ways. We all have our unique uh, expression, and we do things unique way. My handwriting is not like anybody else's, so my fiddling shouldn't be that way either. And I think there was something about that green painting that was reminding me about freedom and safety, to just play it like I play it like Bradley plays it. And that's a really important message for all musicians, and especially trad musicians. Maybe you're playing traditional music, but you're still you, and you still have your own makeup that makes your music that's special, like your own. And I think like that's great, because sometimes people will hear what I'm doing, they'll say, oh, that I can hear the Irish in there, and I want that. Like, there is Irish blood in me too, and there's Acadian influences, there's broken social scene influences from indie music in Canada. Like, it's all there and a part of my music journey. And I think there was something about that painting, and I don't know what it was made, how it was made, but that allowed that openness and freedom in that moment and reminded me that. So
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm hoping that gives people an idea of the depth of discovery that we can have when we're looking at who we are as an artist, and how we're connecting to the audience, but also how we connect to the music, or who we want to be within that experience. It's just so deep. I want to thank both of you for being so open about discussing all these pieces and taking us on a journey that many people may never have, because they don't get to actually talk and interact with artists. And a lot of times they put the album on, they listen to the music and they enjoy it, and it's wonderful, but they don't get the luxury of being able to talk about it and know the artist, or get behind where a performance has been. And you've opened up so many possibilities with the different levels of discussion today, that I hope people are really inspired to think differently about their music, but also maybe go find some new experiences, or come and join us at the different shows that are going to be happening in the next few weeks, and check out your music, and then start to look at what it looks like. And I know both of you are working on what's next. So for people to be able to follow you and get in there where you're sharing that information, so they can find out where your explorations have taken you to that next piece, and be able to follow. Yeah, thank you both so very much for being a part of this.
Thank you, Michelle and Bradley. It's lovely to chat to you both.
yeah, thank you, both of you. Yeah, I really appreciate the discussion. Looking forward to continuing.
Me too. See where these paintings are going, and the life that they all have of their own, because they bring that also to it. And I always enjoy that part. And I say they have a life of their own because I tend to follow, is how I feel. They kind of lead me to where we need to go next. And I enjoy being on that journey too. All right, so as we bring this to a close, I'm just going to bring in the last little piece that I like to share. And that is, usually we have some kind of a movement activity that we would get you up from listening to this podcast and get you involved. And I think today the best would be put on some of your favorite music, or go look for the music that Mairi or Bradley have recorded. Put a piece of music on and find out how you feel to the music, and let yourself dance in the kitchen, because that's what we do here in Cape Breton. And that's the best way to celebrate the music. So that'll be our movement for you today to get you back up and involved with bringing the body back into everything. And I'll just remind you that season 3 is devoted to the transformational process that happens when people can reach into their authentic selves and they can create magic. Our season has several different releases through the month. And so this is the area where I get to explore a little bit of some of the things that I enjoy. And I was lucky enough to have Mari and Bradley come on that journey today with me. We also have interviews with other people, and my sister shares the end of the month as she shares her journey with the family from Malawi, Africa, the Moyo family, and talking about what it's like to be connecting with people across the world and helping and compassionately living. Thank you for joining us. This is Be Well with Michelle Greenwell, and I wish you the courage to face your own transformations for well-being and the well-being of those around you with grace and with flow. So have a great day. Thank you so much.